Today I'm super excited. I have a really good friend and an amazing person as my guest. His name is Emilio Diez Barroso, and his accolades and his history is prolific. Here's what I want you to know about him. He is right now splitting his time in a lot of different fashions, and we may explore a lot of the different areas of his life, but he is mentoring. He's dedicated his life to making the world a better place in a couple different ways. As a parent, as a mentor, soon as an author. He's got a book coming, which we'll talk about. But what I love about Emilio, several things, but one of the things I love is that he's a lifelong seeker. And he has been on a journey of personal growth, of personal awareness that I think you're going to really appreciate. And so we're going to dive just right into kind of who he is and what's been going on in his world, where he's at right now, and the nuggets of wisdom, the things he'll share. It's just going to be great to kind of be in his presence for a little while. So thanks for being here, Emilio.
Oh, it's so good to be here with you.
So when it comes for you, I'd like to just get a little background. What's most present for you in your life right now when it comes to creating a life that you truly love?
The first thing that comes to mind are my 3 children. They are my greatest teachers and probably my greatest source of joy at the moment. Really, they have been, they're now 10, 11, and 14, so they're at those ages where they can really interact and challenge and poke and debunk any sense of specialness that I can ever develop.
I think a lot of times parents say this idea and catch that these little beings are our teachers. What is something that you feel like your kids right now are either shining back on you or teaching? Where are they playing that role for you right now?
But what I've noticed with children, which is quite unique, is that they force me to look at things that other people don't force me to look at. When we have relationships, to me life is a mirror. And relationships become mirrors that the closer we let in, the closer the mirror becomes to our reflection. And when those mirrors get really close, we start seeing things that we may not feel comfortable seeing within ourselves. The easiest thing to do is to sort of change for a mirror that's further away. And sometimes with relationships we go into serial dating. Sometimes with family we stop maybe talking to family members or talking to friends. But for children, or with children, it's harder, at least for me, it wasn't an option to look for another mirror.
Yeah.
So they become really present. Anytime that I'm off center, they just mirror that right back. And I've had some really powerful transformations and healings that have only become available because of what I've witnessed with them.
Emilio and I share a master's in spiritual psychology as a program, and one of the things that we talk about a lot in that is generational things that are passed generationally, and parents being such huge influences on who we are and some of the things that we work through our entire life. What has been something that you've found in terms of transformation that your kids have brought up that you've been able to really...
Yeah, my boy, he, because I have 2 girls and the boy's in the middle, he was so defiant. And when I would ask him to stop doing something, he would just look back at me and say no. And everything inside of my body would just get triggered. And I would actually sometimes find myself physically restraining him so he would listen to me, and then denying the fact that I was actually hurting him. It was so contradictory to how I led most of my life, that here's this being that I love so much and I can actually lose it to that degree. And what I came to realize is that I had all these beliefs, which were my son should listen to me, my son shouldn't be defiant. I would see images and ideas of him growing up older and being a teenager, totally rebellious, and then I had this whole story of what was going to happen if he continued being defiant. What it pointed to was this wound of my own childhood, of how my voice had somehow been squashed. And how at that age and for most of my childhood, my father was a very authoritarian figure. I would have never dared speak up. I would have never dared contradict or challenge. And when I realized that what I was trying to do was what I had learned and had been done to me, and that I hadn't yet succeeded in squashing his voice, it became this moment of total gratitude and an opportunity to recognize that I could also listen to him. I could help him channel his defiance as sort of, and this outspokenness in a way that would be respectful. But ultimately, I wanted to celebrate his voice.
Yeah.
So I was so glad that I hadn't succeeded at actually squashing it.
Yeah, I think as parents, we all run into that in one way or another, where we realize that we're either becoming what we were exposed to, we're becoming our parents, or we're running right up against some sort of pattern that was our norm, and so we're falling back into what we saw or what we experienced. But to bring awareness, and that's what I wanted to ask, is what is a tip or something that you have used that helps bring that awareness to something that a lot of us just fall kind of into a very subconscious default mode?
There's a beautiful woman, author, Byron Katie, and she has a process called The Work, thework.com. And it invites us, her whole premise is that suffering comes from resisting what is. It's very simple, very clean, and I love it. Because it's my experience. And she has a way in which you take a thought that is causing stress. In this case, for example, my son should listen to me. And you question it. And you investigate its validity, ultimately leading you to turn it around and recognize that, oh, I should listen to my son. And the liberation that can happen from that subtle just shift in perspective is huge, and it's been huge for me. So I can use that tool anytime that I find myself believing a thought that's causing stress.
So the process would be, in this example, I want my son to listen to me.
Yeah.
That's the belief I have. And then what's the next question that you ask to start to move that?
So the first question is that true?
Is it true that, okay.
Is it true that your son, in this case, that my son should listen to me?
Yeah.
And the first response typically would be like, yeah, of course. I mean, by that time he's like 7. He's 7, I'm older, I know better, I'm his dad. He should listen to me. And the second question is, can you be absolutely certain that it's true that my son should listen to me? And if people that are listening to this or seeing this, they can do that with any thought, and they can really examine it, but really sit with that second question of, can you absolutely be sure? Because when I checked in, the initial response is yes, but when I really investigate, I cannot be absolutely sure, at least I couldn't be absolutely sure that he should listen to me. And then the third question is, how do I react when I believe the thought, my son should listen to me? And I see myself when he's fighting with his sister, and here I am raising my voice, and he's not listening, and I'm all stressed, and I'm judging myself as a bad parent, judging him as a bad kid, prying him off of her, just holding him, and this whole very contracted and difficult experience. And then the fourth question is, how would I be in that same exact situation if I couldn't believe that thought? And for me, it's like, well, I could actually listen to what he's saying. I could pay attention to what was actually happening. I realize that it wasn't as life or death as I was holding it to be in my mind for him to listen in that immediate moment. And I could celebrate his voice and just teach him how to share in a way that was respectful.
It's beautiful, and as you mentioned, this isn't something that's restricted or limited to parenting, although that's a beautiful application.
Yeah.
But could we look at that in a different context, relationship or business or something? Do you find that that's like where people are getting stressed out, is a belief in a thing and then not examining if they have to have that belief? Does that become very consistent?
Yeah, to me, really, suffering is optional. And pain is different than suffering. But suffering, what I call suffering, is the story that we tell ourselves about what's happening. And in most circumstances, the way that we are narrating the environment, it's almost like we have a layer in between us and life. And in this layer, all that storytelling happens. I like this, I don't like that, this should be happening, this shouldn't be happening. My partner should be kinder, she should be less this, she should be less that, or he should be. My coworker, my employee, my boss, traffic should be moving quicker. It's all of that shouldn't, that essentially subtly saying, I'm not really okay with this moment.
With how it is.
Yeah. And my experience is that we get into habits, it's probably very functional, very helpful for us to develop these mechanisms many, many generations ago when if we didn't fix what was happening, if we weren't so alert, we would die.
Yeah, there was a survival aspect to it.
Right, but we're still operating out of that reptilian brain saying, almost as if every situation was life or death. Somebody looks at you the wrong way, and that whole system comes online. Yeah.
Do you feel like, so with practice, is this a muscle that is this something that you've felt you've been able to get stronger in practicing this muscle, where there is either more of a pause or less of a layer between you and the moment?
Yeah, I don't know if people have ever experienced, if you've ever experienced a moment of flow. And sometimes that's called the sort of being in the zone, or what essentially is happening in those moments. It can happen during meditation, or what's happening is that layer seems to dissolve. And we don't say, I'm in flow right now. We typically only reference when it's already happened, oh, that was such a moment of flow. I was so in my zone. When you're in it, there's no me, there's no protagonist in that story that's telling me, oh, I like this or I don't like this. So what's possible for all of us is to notice how that layer really is less and less relevant. Life happens, and we don't really need that sort of inner voice telling us what to do or who to judge in order to be okay.
So what I think is super interesting is, so we're not just shifting the story, we're actually dissolving story.